gets to decide the future of AI, artificial intelligence? That's what we're here to talk about today. I hope you enjoy this presentation. Hi, this is David Boje, and I want to talk to you about AI data centers and what I call the trust paradox. We're using data centers, the so-called cloud that's where they are at in the data center. And we use it for ordering on Amazon, for our Google searches, for our AI work, whether you're using Claude or ChatGPT. But I want to talk to you about a kind of paradox. The more we use it, the less we trust it. And there's some things going on that creates that distrust. First, there's the corporate illusion that they're going to install these data centers and it's not going to harm the ecology, it's not going to increase our electrical prices, not going to drain the water from our aquifers. It's not going to have so much noise that vibrates the house and shakes us out of bed. So there's material harm. And what I'm showing you here is called a tesseract. So the tesseract is usually just a cube inside of another cube, but I've created a variation here in which there's many cubes connected together, up and down floors. You enter through the steps. And I'm trying to show you the hidden complexity that's here. Now, if we look at the global trust paradox, the high uses is zero faith. So we're using it a lot. 49% of U.S. adults routinely use AI chatbots. In Australia, 71% of employees use generative AI at their workplace. And in China, a rapid integrated private on-premise infrastructure. So it's in the schools, the government, the whole nation is pushing AI in ways that are different than the U.S. and Australia uses AI developed by the U.S. So there's a kind of a global adoption going on. I'm just showing a few countries here. In the EU, 84% demand strict privacy and management protect. In Australia, 60% conceal AI use from employers, and that's because they think they might get fired or laid off. In the U.S., 59% people lack confidence in AI companies as they're seeing how they install AI data centers, they're seeing how it's used in surveillance, et cetera. So there's a lot of pushback going on. Now, welcome to this tesseract illustration. I'm famous for what I study in Tamaraland and the idea that any company is a bunch of rooms. And each company has its own tesseract when you bring in AI. I call this the castle room, for example, upper left, glass walls with locked doors, public sees activity, zero access to the technical architecture that's going on in there. You have Einstein time, the deployment of these data centers, their future obsolescence in 15 to 20 years are going to have to be torn down, new ones created. What I call factorial networks. So here we show 8 tesseract cubes, and they have pathways between them in orange and red and yellow. And if there's 8 rooms, let's say a tesseract for each room, the factorial combination of 8 times 7 times 6 times 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, multiply that out as a factorial, you get over 40,000 combinations of pathways from one room to the other. So the key insight here is the industry's challenges are spatial and structural. Let's say there's an executive boardroom, there's a polluted aquifer, there's locked retail case. When you go into Walmart, a lot of the cases are locked. You have to call in an employee. All that's being run through AI. And mathematically connected parts of the whole system, the supply chain, you at the checkout, doing your self-checkout, the inventory that comes on the floor, all of that is being controlled more and more by the AI. Let's say room 1 AI Titanic dialectic. Now, there's a big dialectic between these four players. There's other players, sure, but let's start here. Sam Altman with OpenAI, he's control trillion. His bet is $1 trillion infrastructure and commercial scale. To scale it up, get as many data centers as going, and get as many people using it as possible. Use it in the military, use it in corporations, use it in schools, et cetera, et cetera, before it takes over the world and replaces the humans. That's his kind of gloom bet. Dario Amade, um, co-founder of Anthropic, he says, oh, okay, we're going to have principled refusal. We're going to have safety. We're going to build in to the structure of AI. And we're trying to limit the use where people are not making the decisions of war, but the AI can chart out the strategy and a person can approve it. Then you have Satya Nadella at Microsoft, and the bet is starting up style, flat efficiency and integration of AI everywhere. Structural dysfunction. They're dismantling senior leadership teams, just bypassing management chains. Now, nobody does that more than Mark Zuckerberg. His core bet, super intelligence, that he can create this thing that's going to go on. And he actually clones himself as an AI into every single meeting, that's going on. He got all his money from Facebook, and then he bought Instagram, et cetera. And so he's massive overconsumption, 800 billion in reality losses, in reality lab losses with Zuckerberg. And he's got a lot of money. He's just experimenting with whatever he can pull off. But the key race here is between OpenAI and Anthropic for what's going on in the world. And we're going to come back to that in a little bit. So the twin inheritance, centuries-long convergence here, if you look at the whole history, it just didn't start 3-4 years ago. You had autonomous physical movement that was programmable in automations. You had third century BC, Cephalibus's water clock. You had Alexandria's peg strings. You had Al-Jari's programmable orchestra in 1206 AD. And you look at another trend, you had logical inheritance, the mind, formal reasoning. You had Aristotle's syllogisms, Hobbes' reasoning, method of the least squares. So all of these are foundational to the AI. I like to talk in chronotopes. Chronotopes means space-time, and Einstein and Michael Bakhtin used it to analyze different kinds of novels. I use some of his characteristics, like the romantic bet, the heroic quest to save humanity through AGI, chivalric safety, Amadeus and Anthropic has that. Then you have the biographic, the great man or great woman theory. But then there's people that know these people that are leaders and they have some other things to tell. There's terse telling, like Code Red, high priority, existential panic mobilizing in the workplace against a rival competitor who might have a different AI solution and gaining market share. Token Legend, internal title of engineers who burned $900 million in computing resources to game the metrics and avoid layoff, to make it look like they could use AI, but they were really just spending tokens to prove they used it, but not for any good purpose. The world's largest startup, Amazon's rhetorical framing to package 30,000 layoffs as a noble return to founding virtues. I don't know what kind of virtue it is when you're laying everybody off. Let's go into another room of the Tesseract, as I call it. And I'm really changing the whole notion of Tesseract, as you can see here. So there's an enterprise layer. So these are companies that go in, Deloitte, IBM, et cetera, and they gather several AI things, and they put their own things around it. Um, SAP does this, and they'll maybe have some OpenAI, some Anthropic, some Google pumping raw material capabilities in the organization, and they're using that to run accounting, supply chains, everything else. So they're the ones that implement it in universities and governments, and that sort of thing. And they get big money for doing that. And they tailor make it and to the particular institution. And example here, rejection of insurance claims takes 1.2 seconds when you automate it with AI. But then you got to have a lot of other people come and explain why the person got rejected and handle all the complaints. So it's really not the downsizing force that it's pretending to be. Um, so you displace a lot of people, then you got to bring a lot of them back, is what's happening in the industry. In Walmart's case, for example, if you go to Walmart, you see a lot of cases, display cases locked up, and you got to wait for a Walmart human being to come over. It could take 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, and you're waiting there because there's a $2 item that the enterprise people that install these systems saying, well, there's a lot of employee theft. We'll control that by locking it up, and the person can push a button, and the AI will find the closest Walmart person to come and open the case for them. It's a pain in the butt, really. So we're normalizing what's called the Hawthorne effect at scale. The Hawthorne effect happened decades ago in a particular study that I'm fond of talking about. But let's look at now its modern effect is the AI note taker. You ever notice you're in a Zoom meeting or a team meeting of something with Microsoft and whatever software AI you're using, and people don't actually show up. A lot of them just send their AI note taker, and so there's a Hawthorne effect. 80%, 84% of the users report changing their behavior and withholding information due to the presence of an AI note taker. The ghost mode, women enter the ghost mode 19% more often. Strategic context is lost here. And the shadow IT deepens. It takes 18 months for CISO to discover and formalize usages of AI. There's a loss of human potentials. Decisions degrade as humans retreat from genuine polyphonic, meaning a team dialogue, sharing information for creativity and performance. But people want to withhold that information now because the AI can learn their job descriptions, learn any instruction manuals. So now you find people kind of withholding that information from AI to not get fired. Now, there's some things we can do about AI. I like Henri Saval's. He just passed away recently, and I worked with him for about 25 years. Went to France every year for 20 years, taught it at the local university that I was a full professor at. And, we look at the dysfunctions, the working conditions that change with AI, the work organization, its communication coordination, the time management, the training, all the strategic implementation, all that changes when you implement AI. And you can end up paying for work that's disorganized by AI and people having to come in and change it, overconsumption of resources, a lack of creation of potential and quality and productivity, but the creative aspect of the human workers. And it gets programmed out. And the risk to reputation and damage and other excess costs. So check out Henri Saval is one of the ways that socioeconomics, called the socioeconomic approach to management, the clover, four-leaf clover that's represented here, is the beginning part of the analysis, and then looking at the hidden costs below the level and understanding there's real financial costs to using AI that don't get factored in with the, everything's going to be better with AI and we're going to save so much money. Well, maybe not. Now, let's take it another room, the material enactment and sacrifice zones. So you have this pastoral promise. Microsoft pledges carbon negative by 2030, flawless glowing. But then you actually look at the reality, material reality, um, not just Microsoft, but others. They're building these colossus AI centers, right, with Elon Musk. 34% increase in global water consumption on average by these AIs for cooling. That was a promise. But then you look, it's 18 million children working in toxic and waste producing waste processing sites globally. XAI's Memphis facility built in 122 days, but generates 1,200 to 2,000 tons of smog forming NOx annually next to a community facing 4 times the national cancer risk. Now, I've seen this in communities here in New Mexico, great promises coming in, but then we realize that then the national average increases your electrical bills because of the pressure on the electrical grid and lowers the aquifer. So the water quality, you got to dig deeper wells. Maybe you don't get the water pressure anymore. These are other kinds of hidden costs, as I said, you could look at. Here's another view of the tesseract and its harm and entangled dimensions. So there's some little vignettes from what's going on out there. In Note A, Sam Altman, $13 billion boardroom reversal. I mean, they try to lay him off and then bring him back, and then people left to found Anthropic, others left, Elon Musk left, etc. In Node B, the locked Walmart case I've already talked about, and Node C, AI is used for surveillance. The AI is noticing your time on screen, your keystrokes, what you're doing in the office. I mean, it's not just the boss looking over your shoulder from the other room. It's the AI is looking at everything you do, how much time you spend in the restroom, how much time you spend on break, what you're talking about. All of that can be part of that enterprise system, and you have to be careful which enterprise models you implement. Now, there's a lady named Easter Knox, right? And she has to close the windows of her house because of the vibrations, because of the toxicity, right, of that AI data center. So there are some things to look at. And these are not isolated incidents. They're mathematically and structurally an exact phenomenon that's happening. So take a more careful look at the Silicon Valley, for example, calculated narrative violence. Leaders flip the script to gaslight workers, working the person naming the harm look like the problem. So humans become attacks. Even the coders of the AI and inventors of the AI itself are part of what gets downsized. The vulnerability hangover. Once you've been replaced by AI, the psychological toll of dedicating your own creative talent to creating an AI system or working in an organization that then adopts AI and noticing that you've been displaced. There's quite a hangover from that. A structural dependency. Workers are tied to the institution via stock compensations, NDA, and it silences them from really speaking out on one of the problems with AI. So I talk a lot about Mikhail Bakhtin's moral answerability, being that person in the once occurrent eventness of being that could intervene with what's going on with AI implementations. They could recognize manufactured doubt, accept the vulnerability hangover is a result of institutional gaslighting them. They could name the structural positions, acknowledge their own dependencies, stock, career, etc., for hanging in there, even though they don't want to use this AI for in their teaching, in hospital work, in corporate environments, etc. So I'm saying the whole thing's being overhyped. I, with Grace Ann Roselle, we teach conversational storytelling, inquiry, refuse the corporate myth of AI, seek the raw living stories of your colleagues and yourself as to what's really happening in workplaces, education places, hospital places, government agencies, etc. Accept the obligation to respond. That's the big part of answerability, not being a bystander, but looking to be a mirror effect, forcing the institution to confront the contradictions it suppresses. $190 billion investment for the next 30,000 layoffs. I mean, is that the society we want to have? What are the hidden costs of that development of AI? Just because they can sell it to us doesn't mean it's going to be useful. Make some more alternative bets on this, on the future. I call it the Tamaraland, that I'm combining here with the tesseract, different tesseracts, the rooms in an organization. You can start to recharacterize AI. You can start to externalize, give AI a different story name, artificial intelligence. Maybe it's artificial stupidity. Maybe you can sympathize with people that are ramping up AI, but sort of revise and understand the costs of it, strategize some new directions, restory, a different story to put out there and publicize it. So if you're putting out a different story than the top AI leaders, the big founders that are promising either gloom as AI takes over for employees, or it's the big boons, we're going to get lots and lots of leisure time from AI. Well, maybe there's some other stories we can put out there. So that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation, and I want to thank you very much for joining in. Give us a like, give us something to talk about with a comment, and I'll try to respond to what you're doing in the next video.